Okay, here's what we're going to do. We have an idea that we want to share with you. It's an idea we've been brewing for a while as a team, and now, this evening, watch out. This is the moment that we're launching it. You can see from everything that folk have shared, we have together people who are here, people who aren't here and are watching it later. We've been entrusted with a privilege and a responsibility, what God's let loose for us in our lives, for each other, for this movement. However, whatever God wants to let loose through us, let's call it a movement. For this movement, we're carrying that privilege, for the multiplying of it into 2021 in our lives, in each other's lives. God has people queuing up. I think we'd be alarmed if we could see the people who are queuing up. We've been entrusted, all of us have been entrusted with all of this. We're not meant to do it alone. We're meant to be doing it together. We all know that this call, what God has entrusted with us, so much that we've been talking about, it's too big for any one person or for the 4 people that are on the staff. This is for everyone, all of us. And that's one of the reasons why we are very proud to call this meeting, and we'll carry on calling this meeting You Matter. All of us are yous that matter. We've been exploring what that means in practice. How do we faithfully steward and let loose more of what God has given us, those supernatural moments? How do we multiply it in practice? We know that you've demonstrated it in this conversation, we're all committed to growing, to learning, to sharing, to multiplying, to exploring. This journey that we're on, it isn't just about letting go of the damage. There's another piece to it, isn't there? There's the growing into more of who we're created to be, and the growing into a deeper relationship with God. It's about actively becoming more and more and more. These supernatural moments that we've talked about, they're about growth, stepping into new things and letting God use us in new ways. So here, are you ready? Here's the new dimension of Finding Freedom's program, our Rafa program. Something that is for all of us, not just here in the valley, in Bozeman, but for everybody who is here tonight in different parts of the States, for everybody who might be watching later. We have a new initiative that we're launching. We want you to be part of it. We're calling it the Chairs and the Hub. I'm going to talk to you about the chairs first. So what we're doing is that we're forming teams of folk who are going to learn and grow together. I'll tell you why we're calling it a chair. These groups of people are going to carry responsibility for breaking new ground and leading the growth of who we are, our faithfulness to the Lord in this movement, in the lives of all those that the Lord wants to give us. These teams that we're calling chairs, these teams, we want everybody who wants to, and maybe those who aren't quite sure, to be part of one of these teams, one of these chair teams. We first formed a chair team a number of years ago. My guess it was around about 2012. It started as a suggestion of a name for a team that was spearheading the growth. We were quite modestly small here in Bozeman at the time. And we formed this team, we called it the Chair, and they were responsible for carrying forward this vision and for the faithfulness of stepping into what God was giving us. Now, as well as Peter and I, there are a number of others on that team, but over the course of the years, Jenny and Jim both joined that team. And I would like to ask Jim first and then Jenny, share with us just a minute about, maybe two, about your experience of being on the chair team. Give people a taste and a flavor of what that was like. Jim.
Absolutely. So while the chair was to advance the mission of what Rafa was doing, it was an integral piece of my own personal journey. When I was given the opportunity to join the chair, I felt a significant belonging. Like I was very welcome to that team, that I actually mattered, that I was very significant to that team, that when we came and we gathered and I actually nervously threw out a suggestion, my contributions were valued. I felt like I was honored in that team, that they honored me for who I was, even though I was this very broken man. In that team, I learned how to start doing my journey. I learned by listening to the other people on the chair, and I started to see how they were doing their journeys. And I learned a lot of what I do now in my journey from those people. I think one of the big things that I learned on that chair was I started to look forward to, and I started to expect that God was going to do amazing things. He was not only going to do amazing things in the ministry that we are a part of, but that he was going to actually do amazing things for me. And he was actually going to help me become healed in my life, and he was going to produce more wholeness inside of me. I think one of the other things that I would point out is that on that team, I learned how to start to carry things spiritually, and I started to learn how to carry things together as a team. That I think was a huge part of a step for me moving forward in my journey. I think another thing too, I think this is the last thing I would mention, was that on that team, I started to grow a bit of what we call God's heart for this ministry, and how much it really matters. And I started to what we call own this for my own. I started to own it. I started to own the mission of what we were doing. And I started to own the fact that there are actually people out there that are just like me, the way I was when I stepped into Peter's office and sat on his couch, that need to hear the same thing Peter said to me, that you don't have to live this way anymore. And for me to pick that up and to start owning that as my own made me feel this sense of belonging on this team. And that team will ever impact my journey because I've learned so much on that team. And I developed relationships with those people that are going to be lifelong.
Thanks, Jim. Jenny.
I would agree with everything that Jim has just said. When I joined the chair team, I was pretty early on in my journey and felt very broken and thought, why in the world would I be asked to be a part of this team when I felt like I still had so much work to do? So there was immense growth that happened in me, in my own personal journey, by being a part of that team. I learned and gleaned so much wisdom from the other people as we were serving together. It felt like I was on the front line, like the privilege, the incredible privilege that it was to feel like I was carrying this ministry and this community with this team together was unbelievable. It was a meeting that I never missed. I was always so excited to go to it, and also a bit nervous. I knew and was expectant that when I walked through that door, it was going to be a holy evening, that God was going to show up. We were inviting him to show up, and he was going to, and he was going to lead us. He was a very active part in that meeting. And I agree with Jim entirely that the relationships that we built because we were serving together, because we were carrying spiritually the ministry and our community, we grew in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise done, both personally and relationally together. It was a really incredible experience. And I agree with Jim, one that will always be a transformative piece of my journey.
Thanks, Jenny. We want to extend that opportunity, the privilege and the responsibility and the growing of it. We want to extend that to everyone in our community. Over these last recent years, we've had a men's team and a women's team who have been leadership teams making decisions together, sometimes separate, for the growth and the direction of who we've become. And we are 1,000% more than that grateful to everyone who has played a part on those teams, because it's your faithfulness that has brought us to this moment. It's your faithfulness that has brought us to the miracles that we saw in 2020. But we have something bigger that we have really been taken a bit by surprise about. And so a men's team and a women's team who come together as a joint team, that isn't going to be enough for what Peter was talking about, for the, well, I'll let you decide how many. Thousands for sure, millions is our prayer. Millions to be touched in the ways that we've been touched. A men's and women's team isn't going to do that. It's not going to help us faithfully steward what God's given us. So we're going back to the model of the chair teams, and we're expanding it. We want everybody to have the privilege of being part of God working, being part of the growth, being part of allowing God to use us to grow in each other's lives and to put healing and redemption available for everyone. It's not just for people who think they're leaders. This is for everyone. Serving on a team isn't just about helping to make things happen. For sure it will. It's us stewarding together the vision that God's given us. But as you've heard from Jenny and Jim, it's also about God using our service to grow us, to let loose more of who we are and who we are in Christ. And first and foremost, that's what it's about. It's a benefit to you and your journey. We'll grow in ways, each of us will grow in ways that we never would otherwise. Ellie describes stepping out and taking a risk. And that's what these teams are going to be about. Us coming together and stepping out and taking risk and being stretched, and in being stretched, in growing. We, us together, finding freedom, we want to have lots of opportunities for growth and stretching and risk and discovering things that we never would have otherwise found. This opportunity that we're launching today, this is about you and your growth and who you're becoming. It's also about us as a community that we can carry faithfully before the Lord. All of us, not just some mysterious person over there carrying it. We're not that type of organization. We're a movement, and this is all of us that's going to make happen whatever it is that happens. That applies to people here, whether you're beginning, whether you feel like you're experienced, wherever you're at. It applies to the people who are just about to come through the door. They get to share in one of these teams as well. It's not just for people here. These teams will have an online dimension. So we want all the people that aren't from this area, when we can get together in person, we still want these teams to be open and active. We want people who aren't from this area to be actively involved in carrying and letting loose and living out and growing all that these teams are going to represent. They're going to be co-ed, they're going to be male and female together. Every team will have men and women, so that we're not fragmented anymore, the men looking after the men's work and the women looking after the women's work. We want to carry this together. We want men looking after the women's work. learning from and bringing their learning to. We want women looking after the men's work, and all of us carrying the various pieces that God has given us. By doing this, we're going to multiply healing in our life, healing in the lives of others. I hope that you feel a bit excited about us using a model like this to help grow more of who we are. A model that everybody is involved in strategically influencing and making a difference. What we're going to do, we have 6 teams. We're going to tell you about them now. We have 6 teams that we're going to start with. And then as those teams get settled down, watch out, because there's no doubt that there'll be more teams, but we're going to be modest. We're starting with 6. We're going to tell you a little bit about them. As you listen, we want to invite you to be thinking about which team might I choose to be part of. You're going to have the opportunity, not in front of other people, but to put in the chat to Jenny or me or Peter or Jim, or send us an email and say, I think I might like to explore being part of this team. So as we talk about them, then just be thinking about that. Here's the 6 teams. Let me list them for you. One is a front door team. We'll tell you about it. A diagnostics and support team. They're chairs. Front door chair, diagnostic and support chair. Marketing and communications. A fundraising chair. A loving our land, looking after it, stewarding it chair. And a groups, small groups, male and female chair. And to start with, each of these teams are going to be chaired by one of the team, Jim, Jenny, Peter, myself. And then as the team settles down, we want to invite a co-chair, someone who isn't on staff, to help lead this team and carry the privilege of it. The team will meet probably round about monthly and then get involved in living out the mission of that team, standing together for the miracles that are going to be part of that team. There'll be training and support for every chair team. So this isn't something that you're going to be stranded and dumped with. You don't need any relevant experience. No excuses, folks. You don't need any relevant experience to be part of one of these teams. We want everyone to be able to step through the growth curve. And our thought perhaps is that every February we will give everyone a chance to swap to a different team and continue the growth and the learning. We'll see next year whether that feels like a good idea. And then what we're going to do is that if we've got these 6 teams, we're going to have 2 people from each team who are going to join together into the hub. We're calling it a hub. Jenny's going to share a picture with us. We're going to have a central hub and then shared teams, chair teams that will help be the center of our organization. So you recognize that. There we have a stagecoach wheel. You can see the spokes heading out, and our chairs are like around the rim of the wheel there. And there's more than 6 there. I wonder if that's prophetic. And then in the center, there's the hub. And a couple of people from each chair will be part of the hub, meeting less often, but overseeing and joining up and coordinating all the different pieces of work and growth and excitement that we have going on. And then look at what that wheel is carrying. We will have the privilege of carrying what God gives us. All of us being part of that privilege and going through the growth and the journeying of it. Thanks, Jenny. I'm going to invite Jim and Peter and Jenny. And they're going to share with you about 3 of the teams. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to ask you, choose one of those 3, and we're going to go into breakout groups for 6 or 7 minutes. And Jim and Jenny and Peter, they're going to talk to you a little bit more about that team. So the first 3 teams we're going to talk about. Jim's going to talk about the front door team. Peter's going to talk about the diagnostics and support team. Jenny's going to talk about marketing and communications. They're going to introduce those for just a minute. And then we're going to invite you to put up your hand so that you can tell us which group you want to go into for a few minutes to hear a bit more about. Then everyone comes back and we'll talk a bit more about the other 3 teams. So we're going to have a bit of dipping and diving. Think about which one of these 3 you want to listen. You're not volunteering for the team. Don't panic. We wouldn't do that. Well, we might do that to you, but we won't. You are just listening to a little bit more about that team. So, Jim, talk to us about the front door team.
Absolutely, the front door team. So I don't have to remind you all what it was like when you first came to Finding Freedom or RAFA, your first interaction with Finding Freedom and RAFA, being a new person, coming in to everything that is so different, so foreign to you. And I want you to go back in your mind and to remember what that was like. We have new people that walk through our door every single day, and they're in the same state that I was 5 years ago, in an absolute and utter mess. And these people desperately need the Lord. They desperately need his help. They desperately need people to walk with them and stand with them as they start their journey. The first connections with people in the community are always the most challenging. We want to be able to facilitate those connections by us reaching out to them and saying, hey, how can we help you? What can we do to help support you? We can introduce you to people in that front door team that can tell you stories of their healing journey. Sit down with you, have a cup of coffee, chat, have a Zoom meeting, welcome you to a women's Q&A, or invite you to a workshop. This team is integral for us to move forward, to have people that are there, ready to be ready when new people walk through our front door. They're carrying the covering, the spiritual covering for these new people, feeling very welcomed and connected, and then being able to direct them to the other parts of the ministry to find the help that they need and the support they need.
Thanks, Jim. I love it. That's our front door chair, folks. Think about that one. Peter, talk to us about our diagnostics and support chair. You're muted at the moment.
I have a phrase that I picked up in the early 70s when I was over here in the States, exploring the idea about doing my doctoral work at the Narramore Institute here in California. And one of the phrases I went back to England with was a guy who I gave him a whole bunch of stuff to read. And he came back a couple of days later and he threw it onto the table. He said, I don't want to know about this. Hell, just tell me what I got to do to get well. That has lived with me since then. Anyone in the healthcare professions anywhere in the world will tell you that you haven't got a dog's chance of helping anybody until you have diagnosed what is actually wrong. You have to start there. And we've got the creator of heaven and earth, who gave humans first life here on earth. He created us. So he is the one that can best fix us when we're not working right. And that's what we're going to learn together how to do.
Thank you, Peter. The Diagnostics and Support Chair. Jenny, tell us about Marketing and Communications Chair.
We know that there are people in our local community and around the world that are desperate for help. They're desperate for healing, and they're desperate to find relief. They are desperate people who understand, and they're desperate for people who understand them and are willing to help. This isn't new information for us. We see it all the time. But this team, the Marketing and Communications team, we have the power to do something about it. We see people every day walk through the door of the office here, or they call or send an email, and they're looking for someone. They're looking for something. They're looking for that relief. They've heard somewhere along the way that we might be able to help. And that hearing about finding freedom, it had to come from somewhere. That message about who we are and what we do and the hope that we have, it has to be created, and it has to be sent out into the world in order for someone else to hear it or see it. And this chair is that message creator for those people. We offer their first relational connection. This chair, the Marketing and Communications Chair, it carries a huge spiritual significance. It's the mouthpiece for our community, telling others of the hope that we have to offer, dropping seed after seed after seed, so that when those people are ready, they know where to come. The mantle that this chair carries is profoundly significant, and we can't just view it as something administrative or anything less than that profound significance. Together, we're going to work to build communication strategies, learn creative means of marketing, as well as cultivating relationships with different venues for communication. Together, we're going to learn new ways of sharing stories of who we are individually and collectively as a community, all the while inviting people to participate whenever and however might be helpful for them.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. I'm going to hand over to Jim. He's going to tell us about the team that is going to look after our land. Jim, sir, over to you.
I'm just recovering from the 6 minutes that we just finished. Wow, that was fast. Whew. The land team. We have our new land. It's absolutely amazing. If you've ever come out and walked the land, it's absolutely beautiful. Has so much potential. God's given us an amazing piece of land, and we need to steward it effectively, and we need to use it in the purpose for what our ministry and what God has for it. So this team is going to be looking into God's wisdom for what this land is going to be used for. It's not just about the technical things, the practical things that have to be done about taking care of the buildings, taking care of the gardens, taking care of the massive irrigation system, but it's about creating a place that is welcoming for people. When they step foot on that piece of land, they can start to walk in their journey into healing and wholeness. We've already had people that have stepped on that piece of property and they have said, I feel peace when I come here. My picture that I carry when I walk onto that piece of land is an oasis, a place that's separate from everything that's busy and going on around in our life. And that place, it's a place that God's presence is actually there. But so this team is going to be strategically looking at how do we maintain this place? How do we make it inviting for the people that will be coming to it? How do they experience the same thing that we experience when we walk onto this piece of property, and picking up the spiritual covering for the land and being good stewards of it.
Perfect. Really exciting. Thank you, Jim. We're going to go to Peter. Peter, talk to us about our fundraising chair. You're muted at the moment.
One of the biggest challenges for any business is cash flow. And when we heard that Journey Church were going to need the space that we were using at their church offices, we decided that we would move out and get our own office. And I said to the team then that my ideal that I think we should be going for is to leave Journey, drive our trucks out the car park, and drive straight to our new offices. And God helping us, that's exactly what happened. From the very beginning of my own journey, God said to me, "You have freely received, so freely give," which meant that we're not allowed to charge people for what we help them with, which means that we've got to pay ourselves to help them. Now, that's a bit cockeyed, particularly in American business. And but that's what we do. And that's what we've always done. We've earned money in order to be free to help people. And so the finance is a big thing. Last year, we raised about $450,000 to put down the deposit, 50%, on the purchase of this 10 acres. So I figure what we should do is double our money this year. So I'm asking the Lord for $1 million. Now, let me tell you a secret. When Susan and I were at our local bank talking to the president of the bank, he talked to us for 20 minutes. And then as he walked out, he said, "Well, I'm very pleased with the way the meeting's gone. We'll give you up to $1 million mortgage." We didn't actually need anything like that. But that was my introduction to American $1 million packages. And we're going to need at least $500,000 over and above all our expenses in order to begin building our professional office and business center here on the land next year.
So remember, no previous experience needed. There's an invitation to check out a team.
But if you're good at construction and printing money, then talk to us.
And last but not least, Jenny's going to talk to us about the chair team that is going to look after all of the work that is done in our small groups. Jenny.
Our groups are one of the key places of significant transformative change. They provide the safety of healthy relationships and non-judgmental support to dig into the hard areas in our journey. Many of us know that when we do this journey with others, it actually creates an energy and a synergy that is often not achieved when we do the work all by ourselves. The healing that comes from these groups is exponential and has significant ripple effects. A lot of us know this. A lot of us are part of our groups. This group's chair will carry the spiritual covering and oversight for both men and women's small groups. Together, we will help ensure the vitality and health of those groups. We will help build and steer group culture and practically support the people that are actively involved in those groups. Team members are going to receive training and have hands-on experience in conflict management, relationship dynamics, and diagnostic and support skills.
There we go. All right, folks, we are going to do exactly what we did before. I'm going to pause the recording, and then you're going to tell us which groups you want to go in. In my recording, So you got just a little bit of a flavor. And in the chat, I'm going to put our 6 chair teams that we've got there, because if you would like to, if you already know, the team I really want to explore is, then we want you to tell us, like even now. Email it, put it in the chat to one of us or to everyone. Front door, diagnostics and support, marketing and communications, fundraising, land, small group. We want to grow these teams, and you can feel, can't you, the additional energy and anointing that is going to be let loose as these 6 teams begin to carry the life and the energy of the call that God has. Now, we are going to be making these recordings available. So if you had a team that you're a bit curious about and you didn't get to drop in, you will be able to watch that small group and find out a little bit more. Please gossip it amongst the people who aren't here, because we want them involved as well. We want these to be substantial teams with a lot of life and an energy and a holy privilege. So tell us, we want to know. We're going to get every one of these teams going during February. They will have a first February meeting, and then we'll grow from there with the energy and the life and the vision of each team.